My name is Bob Jagers. I was in the amphibious forces. I was a signalman third class. I was in 4 invasions before I was 22. I've got 4 little short stories for you. When we were in training, we had powdered milk, and it came in cans about this size. When we got our own ship, the manifest says 10 cans of powdered milk, and our storekeeper didn't think that was enough, so he changed it to 100. When the cans came, they were in drums like this. So we had powdered milk, powdered milk. When we were in boot camp, we were going through some physicals, and this particular time we walked down the hall naked, and the pharmacist mates and the doctors were looking for lice or insects or something. And there was a big, tall Kentuckian behind me, and he was scratching away like mad. And the doctor says, "What's the matter with you?" And this Kentuckian says, "I don't know if I have 1,000,000 of them or one on a motorcycle." Shortly after the invasion of Salerno, we were to enter the harbor of Naples. And as we were entering the harbor of Naples, we got word that it was still in German hands. So we made a right turn along the coast of Italy, and it happened about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And as we were going down the coast of Italy, the Germans fired at us with a battery of 88 millimeters. We had British troops on board, and the captain got onto the PA system and he says, "Don't be afraid." He says, "I've been in this army 12 years and the Germans don't know how to shoot." And just at that moment, we saw the puff of the guns, and that captain tried to dig a foxhole in the steel deck. One of the greatest memories I had during World War II, I had been sent to Columbia University. Before I sent to Columbia University in New York, I was at Great Lakes and I was awaiting orders. And I had an opportunity to bat against Bob Feller. And I actually got 2 hits against the great Hall of Famer Bob Feller. That is my story. Thank you very much.
My name is Leo Zajac, and I was in anti-aircraft. I was a radar crewman, and our radar consisted of a 40-foot trailer. Like the back panel of the trailer had like a desk the whole width of it, and above the desk was all these panels of electronic stuff. And what the radar does, it senses where a plane is and tells the guns where to shoot. Now, they got radars on the back bumpers of cars that tell you how close you are to other things. Anyway, there's a big difference between the back bumper and that big thing, you know. And one time we were at it was Laguna de Bay, they called it in the Philippines. And the Japanese were going across the bay on their boats to support the troops that were fighting. And the infantry had gone through this area south of us, and north of us was where the troops were still fighting, you know. So these troops that weren't killed or captured were trying to get over to the other side, and they're going across on the boats. And we had our guns trained at like above the water, just above the water, and we could see on the scope was like a green line, and when you run across, when you had something in the scope, it became a pip on that scope. Well, when the gun fired, you could see a smaller pip go over to the big pip, and if you hit the boat, the big pip disappeared. And we did that all night. We were shooting at these boats, going across all night, and then like in the morning, the natives of that area had their canoes on the shore. They were like laying in the sand, like with the open part of them facing where the guns were coming from. Well, the concussion from the guns busted all these boats. They were like split open. And like later on, the next morning, we found the boats that were broken, and the next day, the mayor or whoever was in charge of the town came over with a group of people behind him, like a parade, and he was the mayor, so he had this great big hat on with fancy things on it, and they negotiated to replace the boats. And that was the last I heard of that situation, you know. And when I was in New Guinea, they used to have to, we were like on the edge of the jungle, and they carried water in by truck. We had no fresh water, so they carried water in by truck. And we had a first sergeant that he was Irish. His name was Foley. He had flat feet, but he marched along with all of us whenever we went on bivouacs or whatever. But when I went to take a shower, I took showers pretty regularly, and he would say, "There goes that Polak trying to learn how to swim in the shower." And that's about it, I guess.
Well, my name is Harry Levy. It's L-E-V-Y, Levy. I pronounce it Levy. Anyhow, I was a staff sergeant in Second World War in the European theater. And I ended up in the 80th Infantry Division, Company D, 3rd Army. So I was in northern France, and we relieved the Bastogne in Belgium and into Germany. And I remember a few incidents. I ended up being a staff sergeant because I was a corporal, and we went to attack one time, and only 8 of us left out of 40. So they said, "We're going to make you a sergeant or staff sergeant, and if we give you something to do, you have to do it anyhow. You might as well take the rating so you get a little bit more money per month." It's no big deal about that part. But one incident, so in the 81 millimeter mortar, each part weighs 45 pounds, the base plate, and then you got the tube and the bipod. Each part weighs 45 pounds rather, and you carry it on your back, plus you have a M1 maybe and a couple of grenades. And going into, when you're a staff sergeant, and I am an observer for the mortar. So when I get out in front of the mortar, there's no one in front of me but the enemy. So that's the other thing to think about. And then one time he went to attack, and I had the corporal, he was a gunner. Corporal Redding was a gunner. And he came up to me that morning. I knew ahead of time we're going to attack. He said, "Sergeant, I'm not going to make it today." This is his word. I said, "We're all going to make it. What are you talking about?" So it happened that time we got shelled pretty good. The Germans really shelled us. And he was right next to me. Now they stopped shelling, and what happened was they stopped for a few minutes, and he got up a few seconds before I did. He's right next to me. And a shell came in there, and he died instantly. And that's a funny feeling to have somebody tell you they're not going to be around anymore. And that happened. And that's one incident. And another incident, well, I got a couple of pieces of shrapnel in France in my arm. I got a Purple Heart for that. And then one incident, we came up to some woods, and I know that there's no one in there but Germans. There doesn't supposed to be anybody but Germans in the woods. So I fired some rounds in there, and there were tall trees all around. It just happened I had a field artillery officer next to me at that time. Usually you don't have anybody next to you. And a big ball of smoke and fire came up over the trees. So it had to be ammunition because nothing goes up that high. And it just happened that, I don't know, nobody noticed it or something. They never said anything. I was in 3 major battles. It's on my discharge, 3 major battles. And I got as far into Germany, France, the part of Belgium and Germany, and I got frozen feet or trench foot, they call it. And from there, I went back to a hospital in Paris. They flew us to the C-47 for about a month, and then in London for about a month. And I always mention to everybody, I know what happened to me. somebody upstairs was watching me, or I wouldn't be here. You don't last that long in the infantry, period. No. And one thing I found out, at least I'm pretty sure, that they didn't take anybody in the infantry, especially combat, if they're 50 years old or older. I don't want to say nothing about that part, but anyhow, what another incident. Oh yeah, whatever, I tell everybody, whatever happens to you, somebody is worse than you are. Because I went back with frozen feet and I had all my toes still left. And people, the GIs, someone didn't have any toes or even no feet. So, and I never thought, anyhow, when I went into service, before I went in, see, I talk too much, and I talk myself into things. I said right away that I am going to end up in the infantry. So indirectly, I talked myself into being in the infantry. And I don't know what else. I was in the combat area 18 months. I have 3 strikes on my arm for 18 months combat area. And that's the main things that happened. Oh yeah, and I pulled one of the soldiers in the squad out under fire. And the Germans didn't fire on us. I don't think the SS fired on them. They fired their own soldiers. Because we let them get their wounded out, and they let us get our wounded without firing us. And that's the main thing that stands on it. And I can see it like it was yesterday, and that's over 60 years ago. Now my wife asked me what happened last week. I don't know what she's talking about. Everybody's the same way. It seems like it's that way anyhow. Because this is a thing that you'll never forget. And I'm lucky that I came back in one piece. Pretty hard to do it. The last 1 month in the infantry, not as long as I was in there.
My name in the service was Joseph Kowalski, and my rank was second-class seaman. I was in Pearl Harbor in 1941, and I was aboard ship, and when the Japanese came over, when they attacked it, well, my ship was one that the submarines sank, and I was 3 decks below. Whenever I was down and I was trying to put my bedding away, every time I push it up over there, it keeps sliding down toward me, you know. So I looked around and the ship was already on the side. And I said, I better get the hell out of here, you know. So I started out, I got out, and I think God held that ship up on its side until I got to the top deck. And then when I got to the top deck, it started rolling over. So I ran over the side of the ship, and I jumped in the water and swam ashore, and they had a big ditch dug by the shore there. I don't know what it was for, but that's where a bunch of us got into this ditch. And we was looking for some ammunition and some guns, you know, and we went ashore, and all the officers that was in charge of that stuff, everything was locked up, and it was on the shore on Liberty. So I went back and got in that ditch, and I was waiting. And if I could have got a machine gun, I could have brought down 30, 35 planes that the second time they come over, because there was a tree right like over here, and there was right at the top of that tree. All I had to do was just hold the trigger and bring them all down. And that was the end of it. So we had to wait in that ditch, you know, until it was over. The Tangiers was behind us, and there was a troop ship, and they was having church. It was on a Sunday, and the time they got down to the ship and brought up some ammunition, they brought up some 5-inch guns, you know, and there was planes came over the second time. Well, they was shooting them out of the air. You could see the Japanese, and they were so low in their planes, and they were shooting them, and they just blew apart and fell in the water. And then we from the Arizona. It was not far from where we were, right on Fort Island, tied up, and the Arizona was like over here, you know, and the kids who was coming out of the Arizona would get out, and they when they got ashore there, they swam ashore and through the fire because it was on fire, and they got ashore and they stretched them out for quite a ways. There's a building over down here, you know, and the guys come with their skin hanging down like your shirt sleeves, you know, and they laid them down, you know, each laying down. They were crying, they want a drink of water, you know, and the doctors that were there, the pharmacist mate or whatever they were, you know, they said, don't give them no water, you'll kill them. So they laid there all night, and 60% of them died from exposure, you know, and it was sickening, you know why. And they wanted me to go bury them, and I wouldn't go. I couldn't take it because it was so terrible. And now they're having the Utah. I was on the USS Utah, and when it flipped over, the bottom was sticking up out of the water, you know. And now they got a thing built over the USS Utah because it was a good ship, you know, in its time, and they put one of these things on the top of it, like the on the Arizona, you know, and now people go over there and see it all the time, and that's about the most exciting thing that ever happened in my life. Is whenever I got out, and our clothes, all I had was a hat and a pair of shorts. It was summertime, you know. And so the Marines opened up their lockers and told us to get some clothes, you know, because ours was all wet. And I didn't want to go to bury these poor guys, you know. And so they put me on the destroyer. And then on the destroyer, we were in patrol duty. And we got their bow knocked off. And off of that, before they knocked the bow off of the destroyer, well, we had patrol duty taking Marine ships to Christmas Island with food and stuff for Christmas Island, you know. And when we were going over there, we spotted these Japanese submarines underneath there, and the captain gave full speed on one screw and full speed on the other screw, you know, and the ship was vibrating like that, and they turned, and there was a torpedo went down each side of the destroyer, and they have one of these smoke things, you know, to hide the ships when they're out in the water, and so they wouldn't be seen. And we sank both of the Japanese subs, and we sank 9 subs going to Christmas Island and back. And the ships were coming over, and they told us we got all of them, you know. And so we had 2, when we came back in, we had 2 brooms on the mast showing that we're clean sweep because we got them, you know. And we all felt good because we did something, you know.